Thank you for coming. I'm Sergeant Maggie Cox, spokesperson for the Phoenix Police Department. Today, we are here to announce there have been a large number of arrests made in an extensive, large-scale telemarketing fraud investigation. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and present our speakers. And I'll introduce first to speak will be Phoenix Police Chief Jerry Williams.
So good morning to our media partners and everyone. I am proud of the work being done by the Phoenix Police Department's Commercial Crime Detail and grateful for the partnerships with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, the Federal Trade Commission, the Arizona Better Business Bureau, and the Arizona Attorney General's Office. And this case goes back to 2014, and we've identified over 9,000 victims. We estimate that over $40 million was stolen from these vulnerable adults, and all were over the age of 65. Some were people with disabilities. Many of these folks were cheated out of their retirement savings and suffered great financial loss. And over the course of this investigation, 13 suspects were indicted. Once the indictments were handed down, the detectives from the Investigations and Fugitive Apprehension Detail worked diligently and swiftly to arrest the suspects in less than 1 week. That's an amazing amount of work for a large-scale investigation. I'm really proud of my folks as I look back in the back. Many of us have loved ones in our community who could have been victims, and these are people that we care for and that we love, and we would never want this to happen to our loved ones. So it gives me, and I'm sure it gives us, comfort to know that we have teams like this who protect our loved ones' interests and make not only Phoenix, but our areas and our communities safer. This entire project was made possible by the partnerships with the agencies you see represented today. And at this time, I'd like to turn over the podium to Rachel Mitchell, Chief Deputy of the Maricopa County Attorney's Office.
Good morning. I want to echo the statement from Chief Jerry Williams. The partnerships highlighted today are instrumental in a case like this. These types of cases require in-depth investigations over sometimes a period of years, and they are very time-intensive as far as reviewing the evidence and putting the case together. Our prosecutors in the Maricopa County Attorney's Office have to go through hundreds of thousands of pages of business records, hundreds of hours of tape recordings to build a case like this. And after years of work, we now have more than a dozen defendants charged with part of this fraud scheme. Let me remind you that an indictment is not evidence. It is merely an indictment. It's not evidence of guilt. But with similar cases like this, these people targeted the most vulnerable of our society, people who have life savings at stake, people who can't just go back to work and make up for what they have lost. So it's important for us as a community to take a stand against these types of cases, people who would do this kind of harm, and aggressively prosecute them so that this crime is punished as it should be, especially these crimes where they're operating under the guise of a legitimate business. Thank you very much.
We're going to take a short break. Our Chief Deputy Rachel Mitchell has to go to another engagement, as well as Phoenix Police Chief Jerry Williams. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Marc Glassman, Chief of the Federal Trade Commission.
Thank you. My name is Marc Glassman. I'm Chief of the Federal Trade Commission's Criminal Liaison Unit, part of the Bureau of Consumer Protection. The Criminal Liaison Unit seeks to partner with criminal law enforcement agencies to protect the American public from the worst offenders. Today's announcement is a great example of cooperation between law enforcement agencies to protect consumers. That's why I'm proud to be here alongside the Maricopa County Attorney, the Phoenix Police Department, and the Better Business Bureau. We thank you for bringing this important law enforcement action that will help protect our nation's consumers, and particularly older American consumers. We commend you for your hard work. Fraud targeting our nation's older adults is a serious problem, and it's a top priority for the FTC. Last year alone, the FTC received more than 250,000 complaints reporting fraud against Americans over the age of 60. The monetary losses from those reported frauds alone was nearly $400 million. We know there are many more frauds that go unreported. We also know that telemarketing is the most commonly reported method that fraudsters use to reach consumers. This action announced today by the Maricopa County Attorney and Phoenix Police Department will help bring to justice those behind a fraudulent telemarketing operation that targeted and victimized thousands of older adults. The FTC filed a lawsuit in 2016 that shut down this operation, and this year we announced that we would return more than $7 million to consumer victims of this fraud. While that's substantial, it's not enough to make consumers whole. So this law enforcement action is an example of how federal, state, and local law enforcers pursuing the same goals in our fight against fraud can be force multipliers and send a message that helps educate consumers and stop fraud. If you'd like to learn more about how to help older adults avoid fraud, we recommend that you look at the resources available from the FTC. The FTC has an education campaign specifically for older adult consumers called Pass It On. The campaign not only educates older adults, it also enlists them in the fight against fraud. To get more information about Pass It On and to learn how to participate, visit ftc.gov/passiton. The site is also available in Spanish at ftc.gov/pasalo. Thank you. And next, I'd like to introduce you to Matthew Failing, who's with the Better Business Bureau.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Matthew Failing, and I'm President and CEO of the Better Business Bureau serving the Pacific Southwest. After nearly 25 years with the BBB, I'm still convinced that good business far outweighs the bad. Yet today, you've heard how the actions of one unethical company and a group of individuals defrauded thousands of consumers, specifically older adults. BBB shared with investigators complaint data we received over the years from consumers across the country who were targeted by this company. Many consumers turned to us once the company took their investments and simply stopped returning phone calls and letters. We were founded on the principles of self-regulation, yet we believe it is critical to partner with government agencies and law enforcement by sharing our data as lead sources for investigations when warranted. In 2008 alone, we processed over 80,000 complaints and customer reviews from individuals seeking a resolution or a desire to share their experience on local businesses. This information, along with consumer tips and scam alerts, are available to the public free of charge at bbb.org. We also have developed a repository for illegal activities targeting consumers, businesses, and the marketplace at large called BBB Scam Tracker. This free tool allows you to track and report scams and features an interactive map with scam hotspots that can drill down to your zip code. This free tool is available at bbb.org/scam tracker. Awareness and education is your best protection when it comes to avoiding fraudulent business opportunities. Remember that few investments involve little risk. When you receive a solicitation, find out who you're speaking with, the company they represent, and then turn to local resources like the BBB, government agencies, to learn more before providing financial or personal information. Lastly, I would like to thank the Phoenix Police Department, Maricopa County Attorney's Office, the Attorney General's Office of Arizona, and the Federal Trade Commission. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and if you speakers want to, you can stay up here if you get any questions, if you're open to field them. I'd like to go over just the outline of the case. I did email just an overview. I was going to go over that, just a little bit more about the case. I can't get too into details, but I will provide the best overview that we can, what's available, and then I'll field some of your questions. So this fraud investigation started back September 2014. Again, these were all victims that were out of state. So how did this come to Phoenix's attention? That's probably the first question. It came to Phoenix's attention because the criminal enterprise, and I did have a billboard up here where you can see kind of the hierarchy of the suspects in their business. The top one being the ringleader, and then moving down you kind of see the order of their business. This business at one time was operating out of an area off of Indian School Road. So the address had actually returned to Phoenix. This was a 75-year-old female that reported receiving a telemarketing call and being scammed out of thousands of dollars. That was the first report. That opened the fraud investigations. Detectives from our commercial crimes detail began their investigation. We partnered with people from the Better Business Bureau that we have up here, the Arizona Attorney General's Office, both which received complaints they started to see that there wasn't just one, not hundreds, but the number just continued to grow, upwards in the thousands, as you have heard up here. As you can imagine, as the more and more victims became known, and the amount of effort and work to gather the information in order to prosecute or to represent one of these cases, the labor became more intensive. Several year span investigation. So yes, this began in 2014, but as you kept peeling like an onion, you kept peeling the layers back, there was more and more to it, more and more victims, more and more databases that were showing us there were victims. So it's really a testament to the work of our commercial crimes detail that they didn't just give up, and they kept working at the case. We are very thankful for their partnerships. What's interesting, we talk about the Federal Trade Commission, it was working with them that they did their work as far as getting a federal court order to help stop the fraud. So while the investigation, we weren't able to present the arrests that were made till 2019, they actually were able to stop the fraud victimization back in 2016. So here we are today. We know that these victims were all 65 years and older. We know that these scam artists, their businesses, they were actually able to run what they would call is they'd make that first phone call. I know many of you in here probably have gotten one of those phone calls, but these particular people were getting the phone call to convince them that they were risk-free. The phone calls that I sent you, I hope you get a chance to listen to it. You'll really see the impact and how these people are very convincing and trusting. And once they got just a few dollars or a couple $100s for the investment, they'd go back to that same victim. They'd realize their vulnerabilities, the trusting, their elders, and they would go back for more. So some of these victims literally lost their retirement savings, lost their financial stability, and were quite frankly embarrassed to report it because it's embarrassing when you fall for that scam. So what we want to show here is that this was a multi-layer investigation. It was through the partnerships with our Phoenix Police Department, the Federal Trade Commission, Better Business Bureau, Arizona Attorney General's Office, and then finally, that second 2 to 3 years, once we stopped the fraud investigation or stopped the fraud victimization, I should say, the actual money laundering, not money laundering, but the fraud of taking these people's money, is that the detectives worked with the Maricopa County's Attorney's Office to continually identify the people that were involved, to identify the victims that were involved. We still believe there may be other victims out there. And to be honest, there may be additional arrests that may be made and come of this, but we want to really focus on the work that's been done and say thank you to the partners, especially our Fugitive Apprehension and Investigations Detail, because they were able to, once the Maricopa County attorney handed out the indictments or the arrest warrants, they worked within a week to get them arrested. So I present here the chart of the arrests that were made, and I would welcome any questions. I would also welcome you guys to look at our Facebook page and our site. We've done some consumer awareness tips. Telemarketing fraud is huge right now. Like I said, I've gotten the calls. My mom's gotten the calls, my loved ones, and so we want to get the word out. Be aware before you share your information. Verify before you buy, giving that banking information.